Okay, here we go. Much better. Hi guys. Thank you for sticking around. Sorry, I started the Q&A with my mic muted, and that was fantastic. I was just talking to myself like I do. Okay, so really interesting question. I feel that Half-Life incorporates a very wide range of potential obstacles, including jumping and platforming puzzles, shoot 'em up sequences, traditional puzzles and exploration, kill this enemy to proceed, invincible bosses, and so on. The game switches these up frequently, and it often seems like I'm searching for the wrong kind of obstacle to progress, like looking for a platforming puzzle when I need to blow up a door or vice versa. Why do you think this happens? That's a really excellent question because it totally does happen. Um, for me, I think I think you've identified something really key, that there are different sort of modes of engaging with the game, and I kind of have to you have to sort of mentally switch between those modes, in order to sort of figure out what you're supposed to do next. And for me, switching between those modes is kind of like a non-trivial thing, and that this could definitely be a game culture thing, like a game style. 17 years ago, this was how games were made. They had all of these different things in combination, and players would be trained to sort of rapid switch between looking for platforming, looking for different kinds of exploration, doing like just very quickly looking for the different things that they could potentially do. I feel like games today that have this, first of all, I don't know if it's as common to have sort of quite so many different types of puzzles. Um, but I would say that a game like The Last of Us, or I assume Uncharted, I haven't really played a lot of Uncharted, but those kinds of games, or like Tomb Raider, like these kinds of action adventure shooter games are very much in the legacy, I guess, of Half-Life, and do contain like all of these different kinds of elements, but they do a much more explicit job of signaling what you are expected to be doing as a player. So the transition from this is a shooty bit to this is now like a puzzle bit, to then this is a platforming bit. Those transitions, I think, are much more distinct. They draw the lines much clearer, and then I think they do more work to signal you with the space, as to what type of a thing this is. I'm thinking about like Tomb Raider, and it's very clear in like the latest Tomb Raider game when you go into a puzzle area. There's no enemies in there. There's just like big gears and things. And you know that that's a puzzle. Like that's clearly a puzzle. There's nothing else that could possibly be. And likewise, when you sort of are going through, I don't know. I don't know if there's something more linear about it, because Half-Life honestly is pretty linear. It's not as clearly painted. And I don't necessarily want to make a judgment on that. I think that Half-Life is doing something that obviously resonates with a lot of gamers, and I I think it seems like a reasonable sort of a thing that it could be, engaging the player in a particular way, or training the player to sort of do this particular type of thinking, about like what kind of obstacles am I facing and how do I overcome them, that it's just, it's out of fashion. And that doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's going to be less accessible to a gamer who's used to something different, as I am clearly used to something different. Um, I would love to have a better sense of, 17 years ago when people were encountering this game for the first time, how different did a playthrough look between sort of your average gamer and what I'm doing today, versus uh, how different is the experience. So would people still get stuck at some of the places where I'm getting stuck, and they just, they were more used to that, and so they wouldn't get as frustrated by it as I sometimes get? Or were they, really in a different mindset where they would not get stuck at those things? I mean, obviously, there are a lot of gamers who are just better at this kind of game than I am, and or more practiced at this kind of game. So that's, that's a thing. That's always going to be a thing. But um, there's always going to be a wide spread of gamers who encounter your game and who engage with it. And maybe, mainstream audience or casual gamer audience was not as interesting or important to Valve, or your average developer 17 years ago as it is today. But still, like, you're not making a game for one person or even one particular like type of person. You're making a game for some kind of a range of people. So I'm curious, sort of like, who would that range have been in 1998 when they made this game? Like, who were they thinking about at the expert end, and who were they thinking about at the sort of more novice end? And what kinds of experiences did they expect those players to have? And how does that differ from the experience that I'm actually having today? Doing this in a completely different culture. Um, I don't have answers to any of those questions. I think those are all like really, really interesting questions that I would need a time machine, or possibly, because it's hard to even interview somebody 17 years later and say, like, what was it like the first time that you played Half-Life? Do not have your answer be colored by all of the times that you have played it since then, all of the memories that you have of it, all of the games that you've played since the first time that you played Half-Life. I don't think that people can sort of capture that. Yeah, but so okay, so a specific. Okay, couple good questions. Here's one. How stupid on a scale from 1 to Bouchard did you feel when you killed yourself over and over on the explosive crates by the alien mines? Um, yeah, that felt pretty stupid, because I like saw those crates, and I noted, hey, here are some explosive crates. I guess I probably should have used them to kill that guy. And then I went through it twice and didn't use the explosive crates to kill the guy. And then could not for the life of me figure out why I kept exploding so hard. Like, I don't usually use those remote detonation mines. So I kind of just thought, like, maybe they're way more powerful than I expected them to be. Yeah, no, that was not my most clever moment. And that was definitely all me. Like, there's nothing that the game needed to do better there. Those crates are orange, and they have warning symbols on them, and I literally said, "Hey, it's some explosive crates." I don't know. That's just. Now, the thing that drives me crazy is that I really didn't need to do any of that stuff, because all I got out of it was some rocket ammo, and then there was a whole big thing of rocket ammo that I couldn't even use. Um, Do I have any proposals for how to have handled the sniper nests? All right, so let's break this down. Let's actually analyze this as a game system. Sniper nests are they protect a particular area, like an open area of space, and they make it moderately more difficult to traverse that space, and or maybe slightly more difficult to traverse the space, moderately more difficult to actually perform actions in the space, because they don't seem to shoot at you very much if you're moving. But if you stand still, then they start shooting and they take off, not all of your health, but significant health. Okay, so that's sort of how the function that they're performing as they are. To kill them, I have to kill them with explosives, I think is the idea. And I think maybe I got confused at the outset because I was trying to shoot them a lot. And all of the other sort of stationary guns that I had encountered were things that I could shoot a lot and eventually disable. Um, my impression is that I can't just shoot a gun at them. There's no like target thing that I can hit, or it's so small or so protected or something that I would never hit it. So I need to use explosives, which pretty much means I need to either use the grenade launcher or the rocket launcher, because trying to throw grenades up there was not getting me anywhere. And I seem to need to hit it like pretty accurately too with an explosive. So given all of that, how would I handle those? Here's what I would love. I would love feedback when I shoot at it, indicating that, first of all, there's potential vulnerability, and second of all, that my shooting is ineffective. So, for example, if I saw the sniper who was up there, and shooting at him, I could sort of see him. I don't know that this makes any sense. Like, I want to see him deflecting bullets or dodging, or I want to see him sort of well protected in a way that I can tell. Like, I can actually see that my bullets are not penetrating, or that they're. Otherwise, I have some reason to believe that that the bullets are the problem rather than that I'm just there's no way to do damage. Um, One thing that I would honestly really, really like in this game, and I think in the second game, and maybe it seems like really corny, but I would love like an explosive color. I would love like a particular shade of orange, or a particular pattern of stripes or something like that to be the warning explosives pattern. That's a visual cue that becomes a sort of part of the visual language of the game, that I know every time I see that this is something that's explosive. So I would see it on barrels. I would see it on crates that are explosive. I would see it on explosives, like ideally, yeah, the proximity mines would be related to that, but also the the remote mine that I can put down, instead of just being a bland like green sack, would be marked with the same signal, and that would essentially establish a language for me that says explosives, and then you could paint areas with that color scheme or that pattern, um, in order to indicate that maybe you should be thinking about explosives. So then sort of putting that marking on or near the sniper's nest, in the same way putting that marking on tanks or near tanks, or in the, like, literally painting the blacktop around where the tanks are going to be with this pattern or this color. Then when I come into that space, even if I'm not consciously looking for it, even if I'm not thinking like, well, that means that this is explosive, and so therefore maybe the blacktop is explosive, which is nonsensical. Like, or that the sniper's nest is going to explode when I shoot it, because obviously that's not going to happen. But I am gonna mentally, I have this association between that color or that pattern and explosions, and so I'm gonna think a little bit more, like, as I'm searching my brain for how do I overcome this obstacle. I've got an association with explosives, like that. It just is. Makes me think about that more. Um, because I really, really enjoy the sort of tactical scenarios that Half-Life is doing. It's got a lot of different enemy types. I mean, not even talking about the, like, puzzles and platforming and different navigation scenarios and layouts and all of the stuff that it does to throw different, like, non-enemy obstacles at you. Not even talking about, like, the set piece enemies where you have to destroy this guy by targeting an air raid on him and dropping bombs, or you need to electrocute that first mech suit guy. Ignoring all of that, just the, like, types of enemies that it has between different sorts of humans and all of the different types of aliens. And then uh, the kinds of mines and stationary guns and turrets and, like, all of those different things. Um, it, it can do an enormous amount with that. I mean, it's got, like, such a wide variety of things. It can create these little tactical puzzles that are really cool. Like, you can set up a room that I have to figure out how am I going to get through the room, and I know that there are head crabs down there, and so I want to have my um, crowbar out, or like, I don't want to go near that stationary gun, or I need to go underneath those proximity mines. Like the whole room with all of the crates and, like, the proximity mines everywhere that I was trying to get through for a while. Like, that's really cool that it has all of the pieces, all of the mechanical elements that it can put together in different combinations to create these really interesting little rooms. Um, I love that. I think the game does that marvelously. It's the transitions between those spaces that feel really well scripted and well designed. The transitions that feel less well scripted and well designed, where I'm not sure where to go. And some of these set piece bosses that it's just totally unclear to me. Like, I have to do something I've never done before, and that's not obvious. And then the learning curve of figuring out how all of the little mechanical elements actually work. They did really, really well at that at the beginning, and they mostly did it through scripted sequences that you would watch. Like, every time there was a new type of enemy, you would literally encounter it by seeing some little scenelet play out in front of you that exposed its strengths and weaknesses. And I mean, just sticking to Valve and thinking about, like, how this can be really well done, because I think Half-Life does it really well in the first, like, third of the game. Left 4 Dead is so brilliant. I mean, Left 4 Dead is a great game. It's a just brilliant game all the way around. But the opening cinematic for Left 4 Dead, go back and watch that. It is I don't know, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I can't possibly be more than 5 minutes. Uh, and like maybe it's 3 minutes. Um, it tells you like everything you need to know about every type of threat there is in the game. It introduces you to not just like the four core party members, the playable characters, and the environment that they're in, the fact that they're threatened by zombies. It introduces you to the different types of weapons that they can wield. It introduces you to all four special zombies, and it shows you sort of how they behave and how they act and how you can beat them. And then it shows you, I think it also goes through some of the like um, items and things like how health packs work. I don't remember that. I know it does a really good job with the different zombie types of teaching you all about those and how they're mechanically going to work in the game. And then it leaves you in a safe room, which is like the other main mechanic. The only thing it doesn't teach you is the ending set piece of each level, like that you're going to have to defend an area from attack. And then, you know, they have another whole scene when you get to that end area where you're talking on the phone with somebody who basically spells out exactly what you need to do there. So Left 4 Dead, in my mind, is one of the best examples of a game that teaches you seamlessly how to use all of the elements in the game. Using this sort of like cinematic technique that Half-Life also employs. But Half-Life kind of stops employing it halfway through the game. And we see some more, like, at some point we get to where there's the first time we encounter one of those big hulking alien guys. We don't see him in action. We see him like suspended. And we get to look at him and we can kind of make assumptions based on what he looks like. And then we get to fight one of them in a room kind of on our own terms, which is still pretty good, but it's not quite as good as like, I still don't know what his weapon does. Like he's got some kind of a crazy gun that shoots little points of light, and they seem real special, and like sometimes they bounce off of walls, and I have that gun now and I've used it and I still don't know what it does. So like clearly I feel like the game has kind of fallen down at some point, teaching me what all of these different elements are. And to some extent, I think it's expecting me to do more experimentation than I'm used to doing, and I'm like tending to do. So, you know, I gave a bunch of secondary fire options a quick try, and they didn't seem to do anything. Like the pistol, I didn't want to waste ammo. Like shooting it all kinds of different ways, and so I never got to the point where I was holding down the alternate fire key. Similarly, with the rocket launcher, like the rocket launcher feels like rockets are a precious resource. It does a lot of damage, and it does damage to you know, it has like area effect, and it's like a really cool weapon. I don't want to waste ammo trying to figure out how it works. I want it to just, you know, work like a rocket launcher. I want it to work the way that I expect. In the game, you know, to its credit, it's better than that. Like it's better than just a straight rocket launcher. It's not like Halo. It's got this cool extra feature, and the game even tries to point that out to you by having it switched on by default. But for me, you know, if I save and then like play with my rockets to my heart's content, then I might figure out how they work. But I'm, as a player, not used to behaving like that. I'm used to playing a game through, and not, you know, the game has to really give me a safe space to experiment before I feel safe experimenting. And this is really more like uh, this is really more of a like I can create a safe space for myself by using the save system, which is a different paradigm. It's just a different way of thinking about the game. I I forget what the original question was, so I'm going to move on to another question. There were some up here. How do you feel Half-Life dealt with failure? Do you think they were planning on the player failing, or just felt like the player would work it out eventually? Um, I kind of think both of those things, and as I've been playing, like I feel like I've gotten better at being a Half-Life player, and I'm still, I apologize to everybody who has played Half-Life and is watching me play Half-Life and absolutely doing terribly. And I'm sure that a lot of people are, as frustrated as I am, if not much, much more so, at the parts that I get stuck in. But the sense that I get as I feel like I'm getting to be a better Half-Life player is that the game expects me to fail a lot. The game expects that I will walk into situations where I will not know what to expect, and so I will get shot by a bunch of people, or I will get blown up, or I will do something stupid, or just not react fast enough, and that's okay because I'll just die. And then I'll reload a save that I have from a couple minutes ago and go through it again and do it like a lot better the second time. Um, that totally works. That totally works out really well. Like it's not the way that I'm used to engaging with games, but it totally works out fine in all of the situations where the path forward is clear and there are just obstacles in the way. So any kind of like enemies, any kind of platforming, any kind of like anything like that, where I just need to perform. That it is actually like a really elegant design, and it's I think it's fallen out of favor because it requires like a metacognition of or not even a metacognition, just a meta narrative of like um, this is not a seamless story. This is me going back and trying the same scene over and over and over again until I get it right. And also because it requires sort of more fiddling with configuration, and like I have to go to a menu and save and load and do all of that stuff, and that's just stuff that has kind of fallen out of favor. But it works really well in a lot of these situations. And I think if I was not on stream, there are probably situations that I would even go back and play again and again and again more than I do now, just to like try to optimize my performance of, can I kill these two guys in this room without taking any damage, or what's the least damage that I can take to kill these two guys. Whereas now I'm I still do that a bunch, but I'm mostly feeling like if I can kill them and still have some health left, then let's just push on. The places where it's not clear what the way forward is, where failure means you're sort of standing in place rather than getting beaten down, that's where I have a lot of trouble with it. I feel like the paradigm doesn't work as well in those situations. So yeah, I guess I think both of those things are true. I think that that the developers sort of expect people to have, at least to some extent, this kind of mentality of they're willing to fail. They're eager to fail. They will fail over and over again. But at the same time, they'll like. That's part of the process. That's part of how they'll overcome things. at least in a lot of sections of it. Okay. When I find myself faced with multiple directions and I'm uncertain of which to choose, it seems like I tend to choose the more difficult option first and commit to it pretty hard, rather than exploring the easy path first to get more information. To me, this seems counterintuitive. Why do I think that's a feature of my gaming literacy? That is a great question, and I think it's absolutely true. And this is maybe part of where I get some friction with the Half-Life games. Because it's not all of the Valve games that I feel this way with. It's just Half-Life. I want to say that it is. It comes out of playing RPGs, and to a lesser extent, sort of action adventure games, like the old school Zelda. Link to the Past. Link to the Past was one of my foundational games. It was the game that I played growing up that I thought a lot about and I really, really liked. And then playing RPGs like, oh God, I don't even know, but like of the sort of like Neverwinter Nights and that kind of thing. The dominant paradigm, I think, in those games is that we will frequently give you two paths. One of them will be difficult, and one of them will be easy. And the easy one is the one that you're supposed to go down. That's where the next checkpoint is. And the difficult one is a risk reward. It's kind of a press your luck. It's a if you go down this way, you're going to face some danger and you're going to get some reward. And if you feel like you can perform well enough, or you can, whatever, if you feel like you can overcome that danger, then the reward is going to be worth it, potentially. But you don't know exactly how much reward there is, and you don't know necessarily exactly how much danger you're facing. So it's like a gamble, right? This is a little bit of a gambling mechanic embedded in an RPG, and when you are an explorer type, and you tend to play games on easy, that equation leans real hard towards you're not going to face nearly as much danger as you are going to get rewards. And don't you want to know what those rewards are? Like, don't you want to see what's behind this corner? And if you go the other way, like, that's fine. Go the other way. You're just never going to see this again. And frequently, with a lot of, especially the older, I don't know that this is an age thing, but a lot of the games that I play that I think of that make me nervous about this, as you go down the correct path, you will lock off the area behind you. So unless you explore this right now, you're going to lose your chance. And so for me, it tends to be less I see things as I can go this way and this is the easy path and I'm going to learn more because eventually I'm going to have to go both ways, or I'm not sure what Half-Life is doing. Half-Life definitely seems like sometimes it plays into this trope the way that I expect it to, but sometimes it doesn't. It's more of a gambling mechanic, and it's just something that I have definitely conditioned myself towards. That when you see the more difficult path, if you can identify the way that you are supposed to go, don't go that way. And if you are given a choice between a difficult path and an easy path, take the difficult path. Because in both of those cases, there are going to be rewards down that down that alley, and it's not going to lead you out. It's not going to take you anywhere significant, but it will give you something, and that something might be narrative. There might be like a character down there who tells you a story that's really interesting, or in like a BioShock style game, there might be an audio diary or something, or very likely it will be like a shield or a health pack or whatever the type of protective armor or buff that the game has is. That's what you'll find down that way. Let's see. Inspired by earlier chat discussion, kids who grew up playing video games in the 90s and beyond are now having kids of their own. How do you think society as a whole will change in 10 years when those kids become second generation of video gamers? How do you think game design will have changed during that time? Will the market continue to be dominated by casual gamers by volume? This is a really good question. This is a question that I think comes down in a lot of ways to, are there universals to game design, to the language that we speak through games? Because I think a lot of what sort of accessibility comes down to, when we use it for like audience, because then there's this whole other, there's accessibility for games that are accessible for the blind or the deaf, or people who are colorblind, or like there's that whole aspect of accessibility. But when we just talk about accessibility in terms of like attracting a mainstream audience, which is a thing that people talk about a lot these days, I think it's a literacy question. What do gamers, established gamers, know and expect without even thinking about it that new gamers don't know and don't expect? What are the tropes? What is the language that gamers have learned? And then to what extent do games rely on you knowing those things? So you see this a lot more in like genres than in games in general, or it's more obvious in a lot of ways. You think about shooters, or you think about real-time strategy games, or you even think about, so I'm going to go to like adventure games, because that's where I have more literacy. I introduced somebody who'd never played an adventure game before, who didn't play games, to a text adventure, and was just dumbfounded by the literacy that they didn't have, that I didn't even think about, in terms of like recognizing what a puzzle looks like, and understanding that when you see a puzzle, that means that you're going to need to solve it before the end of the game, even if it's not obvious why at this particular moment. Examining everything that it's possible to examine, and recognizing the sort of hierarchy of examinations that can take place with objects that are around the room, how to identify like what are significant objects, and sort of examining each object closer in order to look for new facets or new objects or new keywords that you're going to look for. Taking everything that isn't nailed down, because you're going to use it. If it's possible to take it, then that means that you're going to need to use it at some point. All of these things that seem really, really incredibly basic to me, because I've been playing these games forever, just like never occurred to the person who's playing. Like, why would I pick up this thing it seems useless. I don't understand. Why would I go around picking up everything that I can? Why do I need to look at every individual object in the room? That's not how I interact with a room. When I walk into a room, I just sort of look around, and usually I look for something that I'm looking for, but I don't like examine every single thing. And just thinking about things in terms of puzzles, like, that's not a natural way to think about the world. It's something that we've trained ourselves to do. So when I think about like this idea that there's going to be a critical mass of gamers, that like everybody plays games and everybody's kids play games, and everybody in this coming generation is going to grow up in a household where games are common. I think about that in terms of literacy. What are the things that just like everybody is going to know that today you kind of can't assume that everybody is going to know? Or you do in a lot of games, you develop it assuming that everybody is going to know some particular thing. They're going to know how to use WASD controls. They're going to know they're going to know that it's possible to invert your mouse if you need to invert your mouse. They know like these things, and then you limit your audience to the people who actually do know those things, which it turns out is a relatively small proportion of everybody. And so at some point, like things are going to change, and I don't know that it's going to be everybody has a literacy of shooters, everybody has a literacy of text adventure games, but I do think that there are things that are very common to how we approach gamic forms, how we sort of make and play and interact with interactive media, that once we've established kind of a general literacy of that, then we start to be able to do more. Like we can build on that more than we could before, because there's nobody who's starting at zero. Everybody's starting at some level, and so we can sort of push the bottom level of accessibility higher. I think that's really exciting. And then I think it also opens up a brand new like avant-garde. I think that when there is an established culture of this is what everybody knows video games are, then the alt game scene, the scene of like people who are trying to disrupt the norm, becomes it changes, I think, dramatically, and I think potentially changes in really interesting ways. And when you look at like movies or television today, this is sort of what we're talking about. I think that that there's a lot that we do with the visual language of movies today that we couldn't possibly have done, 75 years ago. I'm thinking about, like, for example, the speed of cuts in the editing of movies when we have like really rapid cut sequences. I think people just could not have handled that. They wouldn't be able to follow what was going on 75 years ago. But today we have multiple generations that were raised on movies, that have gotten sort of progressively more and more adept at understanding that medium, and being trained from an early age on more and more complicated cinematic practices. And so that changes the kinds of movies that are possible, and it also changes the kinds of movies that like really go out of their way to challenge the basic assumptions of the movies that we all watch. And I don't know if Birdman is a good example of that, but Birdman is shot so that it looks like it's all one take. And it's not, but that doesn't matter nearly as much as the effect that it looks like it's all one take. And that has such an overwhelming effect on you as an audience member. I mean, like it changes the way that the movie feels in an incredibly dramatic way. Uh, that I don't know if that would have seemed as weird to somebody 75 years ago who was more used to watching live theater than they were used to watching movies. And so one long take sort of seems like a valid way of doing things. Again, that's just off the top of my head. I don't know that that's a great example, but I think that's the kind of thing that that I hope we will see in the future of video games as our like basic literacy level gets higher and higher. Okay. I'm going to do one follow-up question and then one sort of meow. Yeah, okay. So follow-up to thoughts on the path that I chose. The way I've described does sound intuitive and is the way that I also interpret games. When I ran through the explosive bug nests, though, I got to the end of that path and seemed to conflict with this. I noted a few times that that's the way that I thought I was supposed to go and that the launch pad would lead you out. Was this an isolated incident, so to speak? Yeah, because I don't think it's totally an isolated incident because I think I've done it a bunch of times, so I can't call it an isolated incident. But I do think it's kind of an aberration in the sense that I think one of the things that's happening is well, okay, so I'll take that as a specific example because it's actually kind of an interesting specific example. What I'm going to say happened there, what happens in general is I choose a path that I want to go, and mentally I note that there's a different way that I could have gone back there, and that I expect I'm going to sort of loop back around and go this other way eventually. So I've got this mental map of what the level looks like and where I've gone and how it's going to progress. But then I get sort of so involved in what's going on down this way that I lose that mental map. It sort of breaks apart, it frays, I forget what I sort of was planning or what I thought I knew, and you know, get to a point where like I forget that there was another way that I could have gone. And so in this case, I think there's two things that are at play. This is really, really a great question because I think part of it has to do with Half-Life and the way that Half-Life expects me to engage. Hi, hey, are you a cat? Hey, baby, do you want to be on camera? You got to come up here if you want to be on camera. Yeah? No, not even a little bit. Just barely below. Hi, kitten. How you doing? I know you don't like this, do you? You hate when I do that. All right. Okay, there's two things that I think were happening in this case. One of them is the game threw a whole bunch of new stuff at me. It threw these like totally new types of alien proximity explosive device things that I had to figure out how to deal with. And so I went through a whole learning period of how do these things work? How do I get past them? What are all of the different rules? Can I go under them? No, I can't go under them. Oh God, yeah, I actually can go under them. I just screwed it up the first time. What happens when I shoot them? Nothing immediately, but if I shoot them longer, will something happen? Oh yeah, eventually they do like explode and little aliens come out of them, and then it's really hard to kill the little aliens, and how do I do that? Like I'm trying to figure out all of this stuff, and that pushes out the sort of short-term information of what I was just thinking about. I was thinking about this branching path. So there's a balance between my sort of retention and my attention and my this sort of learning process. And when you ask me to learn something new and pay close attention to it, then my retention drops off, and I forget things that I was supposed to be remembering. So that's one thing that happened, that I think happened in this specific instance. Then the other thing is, I find this the way that Half-Life kind of wants me to engage with it by saving frequently and failing frequently and reloading saves frequently, and retrying things until I get them right, which feels very much like what the game wants me to do and makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. I find it narratively interruptive, and so I think that a game where I could sort of follow a single thread down the path to this like branch and down, turning the corner and down a corridor and doing a bunch of stuff down there and then follow it back, versus when I keep sort of, the narrative ends and restarts in different places, and I'm sort of, there's something interruptive about that, just fundamentally, that I think also breaks my concentration on some of the longer term things that I'm doing. So like, I'm very focused on this room and these three, alien Hulk guys that I know are in this room, and I'm going to play it 4 or 5 times until I kill them all, without them, depleting my health or my ammo or whatever it is that I'm worried about. But that process of like paying close attention to that in this kind of interruptive way, my longer term attention to what happened before that gets lost. So I think that's kind of generally what's happening in that situation, in those sorts of situations. I've been talking for way too long. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna let everybody go to bed. The last thing that I want to mention is the forum website, undefinedbehavior.com/forum, is a place where people are having really, really interesting conversations, and I encourage everybody to go there. And I'm posting questions along with some of these videos, and right now we're voting on what I should play after Half-Life. So Half-Life is probably going to go on for a little bit longer, but then after that, what am I going to play next? Looks like it's a toss-up right now between Antechamber and Thomas Was Alone. And I'm excited about both of those. So if you have an opinion on that, go to the site and vote, and engage in conversation there, because it's very exciting to have a place to sort of have that kind of conversation. If you're having trouble with the site, because it is a new thing and probably not bulletproof yet, probably the best thing to do would be to send me a note on Twitter, and I will try to either address the problem or contact you about getting more details or that kind of thing. Let me know, if stuff isn't working, or if stuff just isn't working for you. It's a pre-built site package that I just kind of threw up, so that we would have some place to go. So there, but I'll try to figure out sort of what I can to make it as useful and interesting and friendly and interesting as it can possibly be for everybody. Cool. I think that's it. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for all the great questions. Yeah, so I am going out of town. I will not be back for the next sort of 3 regular play-by-play nights. So that's this Saturday, next Wednesday, and the following Saturday. I'm going to be out of town for all 3 of those. The next time that I will be here, and I think the next time that I will probably be casting, is 2 weeks from today. Yeah. So I look forward to that. I look forward to finishing Half-Life and to seeing all of you guys again. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.